Shocking. An American woman marries, afar to Bhutan, only to become a wife to 3 brothers. What unknown secrets lie behind this seemingly fantastical love story? Today, let us uncover this cross-cultural love affair that shatters conventions and challenges perceptions. Hello, everyone. This is the American Journey. Today's story is about an American woman in Bhutan. Meredith Hayes, at 50, worked in a prestigious law firm in Chicago's Loop, buried in case files and depositions, her passion for life having dwindled over the decades. The relentless routine, the billable hours, made her feel utterly depleted. One day, hurrying through the cavernous Union Station, she chanced upon a travel brochure. The cover featured lush green valleys and smiling children. The name Bhutan was thus deeply imprinted in her mind. She had no plan, no companion, but at that moment she knew she had to leave. She bought a plane ticket and packed her bags. No one tried to stop her, nor did she tell anyone beyond a curt out-of-office message. This was her own journey, a desperate bid for something more. And so, Meredith departed from O'Hare International Airport. Through the airplane window, watching the grid of Chicago's lights gradually disappear, she murmured to herself, "Can I finally find some peace?" When she arrived in Bhutan, the airport was filled with incredibly fresh air, with small villages dotting the landscape between mountains and valleys. There, her phone signal was intermittent at best, and no one asked Meredith about her itinerary. For days, she just wandered, aimlessly daydreamed, shared butter tea with strangers, and gradually found a quietness she hadn't known in years. In a small village general store, Meredith met a man for the first time. He had broad shoulders and tanned skin, and silently handed her a cup of butter tea. He had deep eyes and gentle hands. Meredith didn't know who he was, but she was deeply drawn to him. His name was Tenzin. He was the eldest son of a family in the village. Tenzin was a man of few words, but quick to laugh. He cherished a life in harmony with nature, embodying and passing on Bhutanese traditions. A few days later, Meredith was invited to his home. The house looked simple from the outside, but inside it was full of thoughtful details. Tenzin's family welcomed Meredith warmly. That evening, Meredith also met Tenzin's 2 younger brothers. The second was Lobsang, and the third was Jigme. They had different looks and personalities, but their respect for their elder brother and love for their family were clear in their eyes. That night, Meredith had a warm, comforting dream she hadn't had in a very long time. After a few more days, Meredith and Tenzin naturally grew closer. Verbal communication was a bit clumsy, but they conveyed far more with their eyes and gestures than words could express. It was as if they had known each other for a long time. Meredith and Tenzin danced together at a village festival, and when Meredith received the kata ceremonial scarf he offered her, she felt tears welling up. When she left Chicago, she hadn't intended to form any new relationships. She thought that part of her life was over, had forsaken love expectations and the future. But in a remote mountain village in Bhutan, she found herself dreaming of a different life. But there was one thing she didn't know yet. Tenzin's family was one of the few in Bhutan that still upheld a rare tradition. That tradition was polyandry, a unique culture where one wife marries all the brothers. This tradition had been practiced in some parts of Bhutan for a long time, but had disappeared in most places. Just as Meredith was beginning to develop feelings, her destiny was already moving in an unexpected direction. The beginning of a story is always quiet, like a calm lake. But beneath the surface, deep and strong undercurrents lie hidden. Such an undercurrent was approaching Meredith's life. Perhaps she was quietly preparing to become a part of this village, not just a tourist. The story I've told so far is merely the beginning. To build a special relationship with new brothers. Prepare yourselves because the threads of fate are about to intertwine. Stay tuned for the next act. As Meredith spent more time with Tenzin, her feelings deepened. In a strange land and culture, she felt surprisingly comfortable. It wasn't just because of Tenzin. Bhutan truly was a magical country. Known as the happiest country in the world, this wasn't just an empty title. Meredith saw it with her own eyes and felt it herself. People smiled when they made eye contact and expressed gratitude for small things. They didn't rush, nor did they try to possess. People lived each day fully content with what they had. To them, people were more important than time relationships, more precious than money. Meredith became increasingly drawn to this way of life. One day, Tenzin cautiously asked, "Meredith, would you like to live with me in this village?" Hearing this, Meredith felt a catch in her breath. It was a mix of joy and trepidation. Could she really leave everything behind at her age and live here? But she nodded. At that moment, she wanted to believe this choice was right. The wedding with Tenzin was held amidst the warm blessings of the villagers. They placed their shoes on a small stone, held hands, listened to the sound of the valley stream, and exchanged vows. In this heartwarming scene, celebrated by nature and the villagers, Meredith felt for the first time in many years what it meant to be someone's wife. A few days later, Meredith went to Tenzin's home to greet his family. Lobsang and Jigme were already waiting there. After warm greetings as they ate dinner together, Tenzin's mother carefully began, "Meredith, you are a special person. I am very grateful you've come to our family. Our family has a long-standing tradition." Meredith smiled and nodded, but her chopsticks paused at the next words. "The daughter-in-law of this house lives with all the sons. This is our family's way." Time seemed to freeze for a moment. Meredith looked at the mother's face. Lobsang and Jigme silently bowed their heads. Tenzin held her hand tightly and said, "Meredith, in our village, the custom of brothers sharing a wife has a long history. It was difficult for me at first, too, but it's natural for our family." Meredith felt breathless. It was too sudden, too shocking. She couldn't process the words. But strangely, the atmosphere at that moment wasn't cold, nor was it heavy. Lobsang said, "Meredith, we won't force you to do anything. We want to respect you. But in this family, the wife belongs to the whole family. Because we are brothers, because we love each other." These words sounded even stranger. There was no jealousy, selfishness, or coercion here. That night, Meredith and Tenzin talked for a long time. It was a completely alien concept to her, having grown up in America with its very different marital norms, so she couldn't easily accept it. But Tenzin calmly explained, "Here, love is not about possession, but sharing respect comes before jealousy, and above all, the bond between brothers is the most important value." "Then whose wife am I exactly?" Meredith asked. Tenzin said, "Everyone's wife, everyone's lover, but you can always choose for yourself." These words slowly began to touch Meredith's heart. A few days later, Meredith also had deep conversations with Lobsang and Jigme. They didn't see her as just a woman or a wife, but simply as a person, a friend, a being sharing the same space. Meredith was confused, but amidst the confusion, there was a strange sense of peace. When she was in Chicago, all love seemed to be filled with calculations of assets and compromises. Who gives more? Who gets more? There was always a need to compare and prove, and she had seen too many loves, including her own past, marriage crumble due to jealousy and misunderstanding. But here, love was about sharing and being together. It was considerate, not greedy, harmonious, not competitive. She asked herself, "What do I truly want? After all these years, have I been expecting too much or the wrong things in the name of love?" Meredith took a walk alone. She sat by the valley watching the clear water flow, and her thoughts gradually calmed. Isn't loving someone about trying to understand their life and being ready to accept that life. And so, a new resolve quietly blossomed in Meredith's heart. Of course, this resolve wasn't an easy choice, but Meredith knew her life was now truly flowing in a new direction. As the morning sun gently embraced the Bhutanese mountains, Meredith sat on a small stool holding a cup of hot tea, breathing slowly. Until a few days ago, she felt her life was fragmented. The love she thought she knew, or perhaps had given up on, was being shared by several people, which was baffling. But embracing this feeling, she talked with the brothers every night, and in the process, she felt a warmth she had never imagined. Lobsang, the second brother, always looked at Meredith with warm eyes. He was skilled at making clothes for the village. Examining a well-made blazer Meredith brought from Chicago, he said, "This has the air of Michigan Avenue, but you suit the Bhutanese air better," his tone devoid of any insincerity. Jigme, the third brother, was still young. He was immature and playful, but he was the first to smile and the first to help Meredith with her luggage. Whenever he saw Meredith, he would say, "You married my older brothers, and I'm an older brother too. So when do I get married?" Meredith would feel awkward at first seeing Jigme, but strangely, she felt comfortable. No single family member stood out, and none were left out. They lived in a structure where everyone was part of a whole. One day, Meredith and Tenzin went for a walk alone. Her expression was still heavy, and Tenzin silently matched her pace. "Am I making a very strange choice right now? I'm afraid if I regret this later, I'll end up hating all of you." Tenzin took her hand and said, "Meredith, love is a choice, but our way is to share. If this is a burden to you, we won't force you. But if you can love us too, it will be a blessing." Meredith closed her eyes and stood holding Tenzin's hand for a long time. That night, she remembered the sterile quiet of her condo in Lincoln Park after her children had grown and left, eating frozen dinners alone, lying on a cold bed, looking at the ceiling. She hadn't had a deep conversation with anyone in ages, and memories of entrusting herself to someone always ended in disappointment or complex negotiation. But now it was different. Every day began by looking into someone's eyes and ended with someone's touch. She listened quietly to her own heart. What was real at this moment? A few days later, Meredith had another traditional wedding in the small village hall, this time with Lobsang, and the next day with Jigme. The villagers celebrated it like a festival, children waving colorful cloths, singing and dancing. Meredith felt differently about these three weddings. The wedding with Tenzin was full of cautious hope, with Lobsang full of warmth, and with Jigme full of laughter. These three new men all loved her, and this love wasn't tangled. Relationships were built on respect and trust, not jealousy and envy. At night, Meredith, following an established rotation, spent time with each brother in their respective rooms. This was something she couldn't have imagined in Chicago. In a city where life often felt like a competition, even love became a strategy to secure one's position. But here, love was not a competition. It was simply acknowledging each other's existence and living harmoniously within it. Meredith suddenly realized one day that she didn't even have the question of which of her new husbands she preferred to be with. Love wasn't being divided, it was expanding. Her heart was slowly learning. Of course, there is no perfect love in the world. Sometimes she felt tired, sometimes confused by the sheer unconventionality of it all. But Meredith was rediscovering emotions in her life that she had long thought dormant together with these three men. The stability of trust, compassion, and faith in the people she wanted to walk with for whatever time she had left. She felt like she was only now beginning to write her own life. Every morning, one of the three men would be the first to wake up, bring Meredith a cup of hot tea, and start the day together. For Meredith, that moment resonated more deeply than 100 solitary gourmet meals in Chicago. Now her journey was not an end, but a beginning. There is no right answer to love, and it might be unconventional for some, but for Meredith it was becoming the most humane choice. A place where the heart stays. If that was home, Meredith felt she had finally found a real home. It rained that day. Bhutanese rain was different from Midwestern thunderstorms. It didn't pour down violently, but seemed to silently soak the world, even moistening the heart. Meredith sat by the window, watching raindrops slide down the glass, and for the first time in a long while, she thought of her mother, long past. The small suburban house, always neat and tidy, but sometimes emotionally distant. Her mother had always worried, always looked at Meredith with eyes full of unspoken expectations. When Meredith had announced her impulsive trip to Bhutan, her grown children had been bewildered, her son asking, "Mom, are you having some kind of crisis?" Those words had stung. From that day on, Meredith had limited contact with her family in the States and gradually assimilated into Bhutanese life. But occasionally, on days like this rainy one, a familiar ache would rise from somewhere deep inside her. It was longing. Familiar streets, the bustle of the city, the complex but familiar cadence of American life. In it, Meredith felt herself slowly drifting away from her memories of Chicago. Tenzin quickly noticed Meredith's feelings. He quietly came to her side, held her hand, and said, "If you miss them, go see them. We'll wait for you." Meredith shook her head. "No, I don't have the courage to face their questions yet. I wonder if anyone can understand what I'm doing now." Tenzin smiled and said, "There are many things in the world people can't understand, but people ultimately live with their hearts. That's what you've learned here, right?" Meredith nodded. That's right. Here she first understood. People understood the heart. Just then, Lobsang came in. "There's a market in the village today. Meredith, let's go together. There are lots of new fabrics." Meredith suddenly laughed at these words. It had become so natural for someone to guide her into daily life. That day the market was bustling. Children beat drums, old grandmothers displayed handmade woolen hats, and merchants loudly hawked their wares. Meredith and Lobsang walked through the market together. Lobsang greeted people and proudly introduced Meredith as his family. "This is my wife. She's been part of our family for over a month now. She smiles often." Meredith's eyes welled up at these words. At that moment the word family no longer felt alien or complicated to her. Jigme arrived at the market a little later. He had bought a bouquet of wildflowers and first offered them to Meredith. "These are for you. I found them first today." Meredith barely nodded. "What are you talking about?" Jigme said with a mischievous look. "It's my turn to sleep in my room tonight. I've prepared something special. It's a welcome gift." Meredith smiled and bowed her head. She was surprised at how naturally she accepted these words now. As night fell under a small lamp, Meredith and Jigme sat facing each other, reminiscing about the first night she spent alone with him. He had seemed so young, almost boyish, and she felt more maternal than romantic. But as time passed, Jigme gradually matured and cherished Meredith in his own way. "I'm not as good at talking as my brothers, but I like being with Meredith. I just end up smiling." Meredith could feel Jigme's sincerity, not through words, but through the expressions and actions he showed her. On that starry night, Meredith suddenly wondered which of the three men she liked being with the most. But strangely, she couldn't choose one. Tenzin's deep gaze, Lobsang's gentle touch, Jigme's bright smile. In her time with each of them, Meredith's heart was filled in different ways. She then realized that polyandry in Bhutan didn't just come from custom or system. These were people who accepted love as a way of life. Love was not a monopoly, but something to be protected together, respecting each other's place in their own way. Meredith was learning a new language in this home, a language not conveyed by words, but by the heart. That language was becoming her own truth, unshaken by anyone's gaze. The wind was blowing. The windows rattled, and the small bells in the courtyard chimed clearly. Beneath that sound, Meredith quietly closed her eyes. At this moment, she deeply felt that this life with her 3 new men was perhaps much clearer, much more real, than the complex and often lonely life she'd known in Chicago. Now she had decided not to choose love, but to live each day with sincerity. That was the truest life she had found here in Bhutan. As summer deepened, the sound of water in the valley grew louder. Meltwater from the mountains flowed through the village, bringing summer coolness to the people. Meredith had grown accustomed to that sound. She used to find it noisy every night, but now it was like a lullaby lulling her to sleep, quietly drawing the day to a close. That day was the same. Meredith ended her day as usual and lay down in Tenzin's room. Every night she rotated spending time with each brother. It was a promise, and at the same time, a way Meredith chose. At first the villagers were curious about this rotation, but Tenzin's family members never put their emotions above the matter. They just naturally shared each other's place, like the changing of seasons. On those nights, Tenzin would go to the courtyard with Meredith to chat about Meredith's life in Chicago, her career, her children. Tenzin listened quietly, even to her reflections on her past marriage. He didn't ask many questions, but when he spoke, his words always contained thought. In Chicago, did anyone listen to what you wanted to say? Hearing these words, Meredith, as if unaware, burst into tears. No one. I don't think even I listened to myself. Tenzin quietly held Meredith's hand. That touch gave more comfort than words. A few days later, Meredith went to the market with Lobsang. When Lobsang was with Meredith, he always filled his hands. Vegetables, fruits, firewood, rice. It was too heavy for one person, but Lobsang never shared the burden. You must keep your hands empty. I'll take care of everything. Meredith put a small, simple silver band on his finger. It was a ring she'd worn for years, almost forgotten in her jewelry box. Lobsang put on the ring and quietly raised the corners of his mouth. If I wear this, can I feel a bit of Chicago's scent? Meredith shook her head and smiled. No. You are wearing a piece of my past to meet my present. Lobsang stared at the ring, said nothing, and then hugged Meredith tightly. That night, Meredith lit a small bonfire in the courtyard and spent the evening with her 3 new men. Tenzin carved a small statue from wood. Lobsang roasted dried meat and shared it with everyone, and Jigme clapped his hands, telling stories he made up on the spot as if narrating a fairy tale. Meredith looked at the 3 of them, quietly closed her eyes, and felt an indescribable sense of fulfillment welling up from somewhere deep inside her. One day, Meredith felt something was wrong with her body. Her appetite decreased, and she felt breathless even with slight movement. Tenzin was the first to notice. Meredith, perhaps you're pregnant. At that moment, Meredith also had a premonition mixed with disbelief given her age. When she placed her hand on her stomach and received the diagnosis from the local doctor, she pressed her lips tightly together. The doctor said softly, "It looks like about 2 months. Remarkably, your body is fine. Just pay close attention." Meredith silently held Tenzin's hand. At that moment, all the sounds in the world seemed to disappear. The news that she might be pregnant, especially at 50, brought more astonishment and fear than simple joy. Most importantly, she couldn't know who the child's father was. That night, Meredith sat with the 3 men. She quietly began to speak. "I think I'm pregnant, but I don't know whose child this is." A long silence followed, but no one was angry. They weren't even surprised, merely contemplative. Tenzin said, "This is a child for all of us. If a child is born into this family, we will raise him together. Lobsang said, "It doesn't matter whose child you bear. Love is what's most important for the child." Jigme said, "I'll play with him the best. That's what matters most, right?" At that moment, Meredith felt for the first time how comfortable breathing could be. She looked at her 3 new men and made a deep commitment. The life in her womb was quietly, miraculously growing. That life was absorbing the warmth of love, understanding, and acceptance, and was quietly yet firmly taking root in Meredith's life. The villagers also heard the news and prepared to celebrate this unexpected blessing. Here, life didn't just belong to one person. It was a gift for the community, something everyone had to protect together. Now, Meredith had become a woman, nurturing life at the center of love, and everyone around her rejoiced wholeheartedly in this fact. The feeling of having the whole world. This didn't come from great success or material things, but from a place where there were people to cry and laugh with. For Meredith, Bhutan was now transforming from a tourist destination or a refuge into the beginning of a real life and a sanctuary for her soul. Autumn in Bhutan is short and clear. The mountains turn golden crops in the fields, bow their heads, and villagers busily move their hands. As time passed, Meredith's belly grew rounder, and the caresses the brothers placed on her stomach were always warm and careful. Every morning someone would place a hand on her forehead to check for fever, and every night someone would cover her waist with a blanket and ask if she slept well. Lobsang made a more comfortable cushion for Meredith, and Jigme brewed herbal tea every day, boasting it was his own secret recipe. Tenzin silently walked every path Meredith walked. In this way, the 4 of them, centered around one child, became even more closely connected. Meredith sometimes stared blankly in the mirror. Is this really what I look like? Where did that tired, professionally masked face reflected in the polished lobby windows of Chicago go? Now she lived a life awakened by children's laughter, starting the day with a warm meal, taking slow walks in the afternoon, and falling asleep, counting stars at night. And at every moment, there wasn't just 1, but 3 people by her side. The village elders called Meredith a blessed woman. This was because even in this village, it was rare for 3 new brothers to cherish each other around one woman and live harmoniously without jealousy, especially one who arrived so unexpectedly. As time passed, when the first snow fell, Meredith felt labor pains. The brothers panicked but were surprisingly calm. For months they had been preparing something in the village for Meredith's delivery. Tenzin held Meredith's hand tightly as she trembled with anxiety. Lobsang covered her with a wet towel, and Jigme stayed by her side, able to do nothing but be there. After hours of pain, a faint cry finally echoed in the room. At that moment, everyone in the room cried. The doctor said, "It's a boy. He's healthy and strong, and the mother did very well, a true wonder." Meredith, gasping for breath, carefully held the baby. A small, warm body. That life, not even having opened its eyes yet, filled the entire space with its presence. The brothers took turns holding the baby. Tenzin bowed his head and gently kissed the forehead. Lobsang sobbed as he stroked the tiny hands, and Jigme, too emotional to speak, just held the baby and nodded. "Let's decide on this child's name together." At Tenzin's words, Meredith nodded. For several nights they gathered in the courtyard every evening, laughing, arguing, and worrying about the baby's name. Finally, the name was decided as Tashi Dorji. Tashi means auspicious, and Dorji means Vajra, diamond, thunderbolt. The name encompassed both Meredith's unexpected journey and the new life continuing in Bhutan. The villagers blessed Tashi Dorji and held a small festival. The old grandmother who wove baby clothes, the young couple who gifted herbal ointments, the neighbor who sent wool. Everyone rejoiced at Tashi Dorji's birth as if it were their own. Now Meredith was not just a beloved woman, but the mother of this village, and the three brothers poured their love into Dorji in their own ways, with no one taking precedence. Tashi Dorji was not one man's son. He was everyone's child, a being the whole village raised together. At night, Meredith would hold the child and quietly talk to her brothers under the lamplight. I felt so alone in my big condo in Chicago, but now I have the three of you with me. I'm not afraid. As she said these words, Tenzin nodded. Lobsang stroked her hand, and Jigme in his place tickled baby Dorji's toes and smiled. That night, Meredith thought, there are so many ways of family in the world, and love has different faces. She was now living in a very quiet and very firm love, untouched by anyone before. And the name of that love was Together. Not who came first, not who gave more, but simply existing together was enough. Now every step she took was accompanied by her child's laughter, and the footsteps of three men followed that path together. That path wasn't on any map, but it was the warmest, most humane path in the world. When the snow melted and spring arrived, the valley was once again filled with clear, flowing water. Green shoots appeared on the mountains, and villagers busily moved their hands cultivating their lives in the courtyard again. Every morning, Meredith would carry Dorji in a sling and walk around the village. Tashi Dorji's head was soft and warm, and every tiny bit of purity warmed Meredith's heart. Whenever the villagers saw the child, they would squint their eyes and say, "This child is loved by three. He's so lucky." Meredith had gotten used to these words. When she left Chicago, what she feared most was being different, of failing by conventional standards. But now this difference had become the strength that made Meredith unique. One day, a carefully forwarded email arrived printed out by a helpful villager who occasionally went to a town with better internet. It was from Meredith's daughter. The tone, a mix of concern and hesitant curiosity, was clear. "Mom, we still can't fully understand why you're there or what's really going on. But I've been thinking lately, why couldn't I offer more support when you seemed so unhappy? Why did I just assume you'd always be... Mom. Now I pray every day, may you and this new baby both be healthy. We miss you very much. Really very much." Meredith held the printout and sat for a long time saying nothing. Tenzin walked over and said, "You have people you love in America too. They also want you to be happy." Hearing these words, Meredith vaguely felt that her Bhutanese family and her American family could coexist rather than conflict with each other. A few days later, Meredith borrowed a small courtyard in the middle of the village and made food she had perfected over years in America. A rich beef stew, some crusty artisan bread she managed to bake in a makeshift oven, and a simple apple crumble. Though clumsy with the unfamiliar utensils, the villagers learned to savor the new flavors and laughed heartily. "Meredith has brought us the taste of America." That day, for the first time, Meredith didn't feel any awkwardness about her American life. Now America was not a place she had abandoned and left, but a memory that could be accepted as her roots, part of who she was. Eventually, Meredith dictated a letter for someone to type and email to her daughter. "My dearest, I'm now in a small country called Bhutan. I live with 3 new people who are very good to me, don't get jealous of each other, and cherish me with all their hearts. It's okay if you don't understand. Just know that Dorji and I are doing well, and come visit our village someday. If you see it, you'll know why this life is the perfect puzzle piece for me." The day the email was sent, Meredith stood in the middle of the courtyard holding Dorji. The child's eyes were clear, and the warmth of her new men and Meredith's deep love were all contained in those pupils. The 3 brothers, as usual, watched Meredith quietly. Tenzin was tilling the garden, Lobsang was sewing a piece of baby cloth, and Jigme was carving a small toy from wood. Meredith looked at this scene and smiled slowly. At this moment, she remembered a bleak New Year's Eve in Chicago, watching fireworks alone from her window, feeling a profound sense of isolation. She didn't know then. She didn't know where she should go, or what kind of love she wanted, or if it was even possible for her anymore. But now I know. Love isn't about who grabs it first, or what society dictates, but who walks with you to the end. Meredith, holding Tashi Dorji, slowly walked towards her brothers. Their gazes towards her were always so warm, and the daytime sun enveloped her shoulders like a blessing. At this moment, she was certain. The unique love that didn't exist anywhere else existed within her. That love wasn't created alone, but born together, created together. And so, the quietest, most steadfast family blossomed in a small village in Bhutan. On the day Dorji celebrated his first birthday, a gentle breeze blew through the village. The wind blowing from beyond the mountains that day was fragrant, and Meredith felt it was like a blessing. Children laughed in the courtyard, adults laid out small potteries sharing warm soup and bread. The three new brothers brought out the gifts they had prepared for Pema Dorji's Tashi Dorji's first birthday. Tenzin held Tashi Dorji and handed him a small wooden dove. "I hope this child can be as free as a fearless bird wherever it flies," Lobsang said, putting on a colorful woolen coat he had woven himself. "I hope our child's heart will always be full of warmth." Jigme handed over a wooden horse he had made himself and shouted, "This is the best ride. Don't be afraid, ride it any time. We'll push you." At that moment, Meredith quietly held Dorji and looked at the three of them in turn. She was overwhelmed by how honest and profound the love created was. As night fell, a bonfire was lit under a small lamp, and people sat quietly around it. Meredith spoke after a long pause. "When I first came to Bhutan, I just wanted to run away. I just wanted to escape a life that felt empty, full of pressures, and cold indifference." All eyes turned to her. "But here, I encountered such a different kind of love. People don't argue over who should have me, don't argue over who is more important, but respect me simply because we are together. With this love, our child Tashi Dorji was born a miracle in itself." The brothers' eyes were slightly red. Meredith continued, "Some people might say this love is wrong. Many will say they can't understand it. But this is the way only we know this is the real family we've created. I'm no longer swayed by American standards where happiness is about career status and material possessions. In this small village, I was able to choose for myself what kind of person I wanted to be." She placed her hand on Dorji's head. "I hope this child grows up understanding that there's no right answer to the shape of love. Most importantly, learn to find your own way to laugh with others without hurting anyone." The bonfire burned brightly, and a gentle breeze wrapped these words softly. That night, Meredith lay on the floor with Pema Dorji and her new brothers. The sky was full of stars, and the lights of the village below the mountain flickered like tiny specks of purity. Tenzin said, "We are like protagonists in a very strange story. In America, they'd probably make a reality show about us and call it unconventional love." Jigme smiled mischievously. "But brother, your story isn't over yet. This is just the beginning." Lobsang said softly, "We're just living each day well." Meredith smiled, looking at the three of them in turn. "I thought. Love in the end is about growing together, aging together, and being remembered together. The only form that cannot be said to be right or wrong as long as it is true." At the center of that love, she was no longer afraid. The strange love people talked about was now the most humane love for her, and most importantly, the warmest world for Dorji. This is a rather special, but more real than anyone's love story of an American woman encountered in Bhutan. Everyone's love has a different shape. What matters is whether that love hurts anyone and can fully embrace someone. I hope today's story has left a little warmth somewhere in your heart. If you could share your thoughts in the comments, it would be a very precious time. Subscribing and liking are the forces that sustain our little relationship. In the next story, I will prepare something sincere to touch your heart. I hope the love of Bhutan permeates your heart like a gentle breeze. Until now, this has been the American Journey. Thank you, everyone.